Well, I am here with a special guest that I would normally troll, but seeing how he's a guest, I guess I'll be polite this time. Welcome to the, it does happen from time to time, just very infrequently. So welcome to the channel, DasGeek.
What's happening, my man? I'm really excited about this one. This was one you cooked up. This is one of your first ideas of us doing a collaboration together was soundtracks.
Video game soundtracks, because I'm a fan. I love video game soundtracks. I think they are so underrated as like a, not just a genre, but overall as far as like their musical appreciation as a whole. Like there are a lot of good soundtracks, and for every crappy game I've played, one game has been saved by a good soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if you ever want to know the importance of a soundtrack, just try to play a game with the music down. When I have kids, and so sometimes I have to not have the music playing, right, because they're sleeping or whatever, and I'm playing a game. And if you're playing a game without the soundtrack, it takes away all the fun. Like, it just got to the point where I had to get some wireless headphones so I could hear the soundtrack. If you don't have that, it takes away 50% of the experience of a game, no matter how good the gameplay is.
Sports games being the exception to that, but that's just me because I get annoyed more with the announcers.
Well, that's true.
I get more annoyed with the announcers saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. But yeah,
that's true. I don't play sports games, so I wouldn't.
You're not missing anything. So anyway, we are looking at our top 5, so it would be a top 10, I guess, of video game soundtracks. And these are not specific to Linux. So before anybody questions whether or not this is the normal content we would do, my channel is gaming, technology, and Linux. Get over it.
Yeah, and anytime you do a favorites, people are going to be like, this sucks. I'm giving it a downvote because you didn't mention X. And, you know, these are our favorites. Instead of saying it like that, maybe you leave your comment as saying, hey, you guys should check out X. Because that would actually be helpful. These are our favorites. This is the music that we fell in love with the games that we played. So I think that's important to differentiate here.
I very much agree. And seeing how you are the guest, I'm going to give you the first go.
Oh, man, I feel honored here. And I'm going to drop a bomb on you, an awesome bomb of musical goodness. Now, I'm big. In fact, my channel started on audiophile stuff. So I'm not only big on the audiophile equipment, but like you, I absolutely love game soundtracks. I love movie soundtracks as well. To me, they're the modern day versions of the music of like Bach and Beethoven, the symphonies, the orchestras. You're getting all of that in there. They're great music to have in the background if you're programming or you're learning something new or studying. And the first one I'm going to drop on you is probably one of the greatest games of my generation, I think, period. One of the games my wife says I widowed her over for like 6 months, where she didn't even know who I was. And that soundtrack is Elder Scrolls. That soundtrack is Elder Scrolls Skyrim soundtrack by Jeremy Soule. This soundtrack just takes you with these medieval sounds into the whole new world, which is what the whole Skyrim game is, right? You become this other person, and it's so encapsulating with constant quests and everything throwing at you in different worlds almost that you're exploring within the world that you're playing in. I mean, absolutely brilliant use of brass and strings and just all of that music that just gets into you and motivates you to keep going. Or if you feel like something bad's coming around the corner, the music's going to tell you you've just walked into an area where stuff's going to hit the fan. That's this music, and every time you listen to it, you can think back on moments of the gameplay. And to me, that just shows you how powerful the music is because it creates that imagery, right? It makes you recall memories. That's something amazing. Have you listened to the soundtrack?
Oh, I have listened to this because I have about probably 80 hours into Elder Scrolls. I mean, between... like you said, calling this a time sink is more like you make people a widow, or, you know, they wonder if you end up eating kind of game. Like, Does energy drinks count to
Right.
stay awake to play more? Because it's always another quest. It's always another quest. My,
That's right.
I love the soundtrack for it. Like you said, I love it when you are, you're just out and exploring, and it has that ambient music that just goes with it, like for the sound, and then you're like a level 3. Oh, hi, big drag. Oh, God. And the music just like subtly changes to like that deep drum. And you're just like,
Yes.
oh, that's a whole lot of bad. And I
Right.
love that. I love that soundtrack to no end. Definitely makes the game 1,000 times more atmospheric.
So what do you got? What's your pick here?
Well, I mean, I have technically this one would be actually a video game series, but the first game is okay. Soundtrack's good, but it's okay. The ones I picked specifically were Shadow Hearts 2 and the spin-off sequel, whatever you want to call it, Shadow Hearts from the New World or Shadow Hearts 3. I'm not gonna try to pronounce the Japanese guy's name. I will butcher it, and I will offend about every Japanese person that there possibly is on the planet. So names below somewhere down here.
Yoshitaka Hiroto. See, I don't care about offending. I'll try it. That's my best attempt at trying.
Touche. So from the New World, or Shadow Hearts 3, I actually chose the title track from the New World, and Dreamcatcher. These two tracks to me kind of epitomize what that game is. It's a steampunk spin on the 1920s, alternate history. There's a fantasy element to it. But it also deals with like a lot of Native American type stuff. So it has a lot of that infusion of sound. So like the Native American rain dancing and, different dance celebrations and stuff that they do. It has a lot of that feel to it. And to me, that is awesome. It's so hard to capture with good modern, aesthetics and like sound aesthetics and stuff, and I think they nail it. And for unfortunately I'm gonna go with number 2. I actually chose 3 songs for this one because I just love this soundtrack, but I have a unique taste in music, let's put it that way. One's called Twilight Street, one's called Astaroth, which is, no, this is not a WoW reference. This game came out in 2004. And another one is called the Three Karmas, or the Three Karma. These epitomize pretty much the entirety of this game. It is very up and down with its emotions. Like one song, Twilight Street, starts out with just like simple guitars and just kind of like a whimsical, like typical video game RPG feel. You go to Astaroth and like the Three Karma. Three Karma starts off with a deep organ. It's just like very like evil type sounding notes, and it plays through that up and down the entire track. That to me fits with the steampunk vibe that it goes with and that alternate history feeling, because it's a very dark and depressing game. I'm not gonna lie, newsflash for those that haven't played it, there is no happy ending.
It sounds like the perfect game for you too. That kind of dark, mysterious type of sound. I listened to some of it when I saw it on your recommendation list. Very, very interesting mixture of music, almost, like I said, little Middle Eastern mixes, lots of different cultural mixes within it that make it something I think truly awesome to check out. So definitely a good one.
All right, so what's your next choice?
All right, man, I'm going with some mainstream ones here because, it really wasn't, honestly, unlike a lot of things, music appreciation of the music within games is something kind of new, and there's actually a reason for it. There's a Twitch streamer out there called Man vs. Game, and he was one of the first back on when Twitch was called Justin TV and stuff.
Oh dear Lord, 2009-ish.
Yeah, so he's one of the kind of the original OG streamers out there, and he had this fascination when you'd watch his stream of this 8-bit music. And I love people that are passionate about anything. Like if somebody's passionate about something, I'm instantly interested in hearing about what it is about that makes it tick. And he always talked about the music, and I'd be listening to this kind of like 8-bit music and stuff going, how does he like that? But eventually, as I listened to more and more soundtracks, I started finding out, this is amazing. This is our modern day Mozart in a lot of ways, right? So a lot of the stuff that I pick out is more modern because it was later in life that I really grew an appreciation for this stuff. But certainly some of these, even before that time, had an impact on me where I would just sit there in the game and listen to the sound and go, oh my gosh. And one of those games, 2 games, it's a series, Mass Effect 1 and 2, definitely brought that in to me. That was a game I was playing where I was just like, my gosh, who composed this music? The answer is Jack Wall, Sam Hullock, and Richard Jackson, David Cates. So kind of a compilation of folks that contributed to the music here. But the Mass Effect music it's the best way to describe it is alien. You feel otherworldly when you are listening to this music. You feel like you've traveled to a galaxy and this is the music that's playing in the background when you've visited a planet that we've never been to before. It's just powerfully commanding the instant you start hearing the soundtrack from the moment you boot into the game. And as you start playing through the levels, you start kind of almost when you start listening to this again, this is another one where you start daydreaming about moments of the game. Mass Effect 1 and 2, first of all, some of the best games, definitely would be in my top 5 up there with Elder Scrolls, the best game of all time. I absolutely love the story. It completely captivated me. Very, very enjoyable first-person shooter plus RPG elements and all of that in there. But the game would not have been near as fantastic if it wasn't for the incredible work they did on this soundtrack.
I 100% agree. I haven't played all 3 games. I will say, while I enjoy the music on the third one, I will personally agree that 1 and 2 have the better soundtracks personally. Funny thing is, one of those guys that you mentioned, Sam Hullock, little known fact, about 4 years ago, Ubuntu Touch was still a thing. And Sam Hullock actually created some startup sounds for the Ubuntu Touch project, or Ubuntu Touch. So if you guys would like your startup sound still, why, I don't know, but hey, those are actually available somewhere on SoundCloud. So I'd go pick them up personally. They're actually really good. But like you said, I love the music. It is just as atmospheric and makes the game that much more, almost like Elder Scrolls, Skyrim does. Like, you could not have the type of atmosphere and the world building that needed to go into Mass Effect without the music.
Right.
And I know for me, my biggest thing is on 2, it's different as soon as you start up the game, because you got that that weird intro as soon as you hit the start screen.
Right.
And when you press up and down or with the controller, and you just got that doosh 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 sound with the, it makes the game like Absolutely. That is the thing, and I love that series. Again, ending, okay, I won't go into that.
Yeah, we can't save them all, right? But overall, it's definitely a worthy experience to go check out. And I thought it was so interesting when you were telling me we were looking through some of this. Number one, we picked different games, but at one point, some of the composers we picked are the same, which is really unique. Mm-hmm. And then number 2, that Ubuntu Touch story I thought was absolutely fascinating. I went and listened to the startup sound, and it's really good. Like, for startup sounds, if you're ever going to have one, that would be the startup sound I would want to have. It's way better than any other startup sound I've heard. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that you knew that history part of it too. So what's your second pick?
My second pick, the game is terrible. I will be the first to admit it. It is a bad knockoff of God of War meets Prince of Persia, and it's mixed with a wannabe Tomb Raider. That's about the best way to describe the overall game.
Right.
The music, though, is fantastic. That is the one saving grace from this game for me. I love the soundtrack. It's called Blades of Time. Nice. It is by Yuri Lin, if I am pronouncing that right. And the track that I chose as the example for the game is called Fabula. It's the first song you hear as soon as you actually get to the start menu. And it's one of those songs that captures you just enough where you want to listen to it all the way through. And you're like,
nice.
And like, I don't know how many times I've listened to that, but it's got that, like, I don't want to say religious end of things, like that old Gregorian type feel to it with the music, like that old, like, you know, medieval ages type deal as far as the sound to it. Very old church or old Catholic, old English type sound that you get from like a religious end of things, and that does actually play into the game, which makes the soundtrack better. Because
nice.
without that, then I would not care about this game from one end to the other. But that's
how awesome is that, though, that you could appreciate a game. Even though the game's terrible, you still fell in love with the soundtrack of the game, which speaks to the composer's work there, right? Because you're like, this game sucks, but I'm going to sit at the start screen just to listen to this song because it rocks.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, it's funny because before we even started this, because I have the OST obviously on from Steam, but I didn't feel like digging for it, so I just double-clicked the Steam icon and just booted up the game so I could just hear the soundtrack.
That's brilliant. I love it. I love it. All right, so I'm going to drop one on you here from Jack Wall.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Jack Wall?
I am very familiar.
Yeah. How about Myst? I figured you would be. How about some Myst 3 action here? Myst 3. Did you ever get into the Myst games at all?
1 and 2. Then when they started going into like 3 and Ravine and all the other side projects, I kind of stopped paying attention. I'll be brutally honest.
So it's funny because this is one situation where I never played the Myst games. I had friends that played them and loved them, but I think there were a lot of puzzles in them. I'm not a puzzle game kind of person, even though the graphics look beautiful within them. This was also around the time, I believe, like Ultima Online and EverQuest were out, and I was completely enthralled with those games to where I played nothing else in the universe. So this game kind of came out in the wrong time periods for me, the Myst games, and like I said, it's really not my genre, but the music is definitely in my genre. I mean, this soundtrack is mystical, is the best word I could use to describe it. It takes you completely away from your environment and takes you into this whole new world that almost feels like it's relaxing and meditative. It's fantastic to program to, or doing something that you need deep concentration for. There's almost this otherworldly feel about it. Like if you were to go on to a different planet and listen to their orchestra or symphony music, this is what they would play. That's kind of what it felt like to me when you listen to this soundtrack. I absolutely love it. And my favorite thing about it, when I was going through these, picking my favorite, I kept thinking as I was listening to the soundtrack song after song, gosh, I wish the song wouldn't end. Like, and it's good when you're just like, I'm just going to repeat that song again. Even though I need to get through them all to make sure this is my right pick, I just want to hear that song again. And that's kind of how I felt about Myst 3 soundtrack.
That is definitely one I will have to check out. I did enjoy the soundtracks for the first 2. They were kind of minimalistic, though. First Myst came out in 93, 95, somewhere around there.
Right.
But no, I'll definitely have to check those out. But as far as Jack Wall as a composer, obviously, like you said, he worked on Mass Effect, so you know what you're getting for the most part. You're getting a solid, good, atmospheric composer, and that to me is
Right.
always awesome to have, especially in like an event, like a point and click adventure game, like what Myst really is, or a puzzle game. That
Mm-hmm.
Myst is going for that atmosphere, and in order to have that atmosphere, you need the music, not just the pretty visuals.
Right. Absolutely. So what's your next pick?
Oh, my next pick. This is a PS1 RPG. If you guys have not been able to catch a pattern here, I am a RPG fan. I enjoy a good story.
Nothing wrong with that.
This one is Legend of Dragoon. Dennis Martin, and I'm going to butcher this name, Takeo Maratsu. Sorry if I butcher it. The song that I chose as an example of how good I think this soundtrack as a whole is, not just to mention the game, is If You Still Believe. This is one of those tracks that you really can't explain what it sounds like until you hear it. It's got so many different influences in it. Then you have a female vocalist coming in about 35-40 seconds into the song. It's like a 5.5-minute song, which for a video game was absurd, right? Because you're used to these 2-minute like songs, and it's like a legit composition of somebody doing this track. Like, this is the song that you hear when you get to the menu. This is the song that you hear with the pre-roll rendered CGI footage that plays before the game. Like, they've really pushed this, and I can see why, because the females' vocals are insanely good. The mixing and mastering of it is really, really good. I cannot, unfortunately, explain it in good musical terms what that intro is going to do, and once you hear the female vocals over it, because there's really nothing that word wise will give it justice, honestly. That's the only way I can describe it.
I like it. Yeah, that was one of my favorite picks when I was listening to your list. That one stands out in my mind as the one I was listening to going, yeah, I really dig this. There's a couple others. In fact, your list, your next ones that you're going to cover are they were added to my list as some of my favorites as well. Before we get there, my next pick, I guess, is Hollow Knight. And nice. I mean, this game, wow, was it an indie game that kind of took the world by storm, right? Everything about it was just so fun and playful, and just an absolute blast for a console-like game created with modern day graphics. Christopher Larkin is the composer here. I mean, this is what every game soundtrack wants to be when it grows up, I feel like. A truly perfect blend of music that, is both majestic and truly encompassing, where you feel like, again, there is nothing else you can think of but Hollow Knight when you hear this soundtrack. Like, the two go together like Zelda and its music does. You get some good headphones on, you get a proper DAC and amp, you sit back with a Hollow Knight soundtrack, you're in for a really good night. Maybe a beer, maybe a scotch, something like that too, but you're in for a really good night with that soundtrack.
I was going to say, why not have a beer and a scotch?
You know what? You're right. What is it? Beer before liquor, never sticker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. That's the old Southern rule in there. Yeah. You gotta. You don't want to mix them wrong.
Yeah, you start hard and down step. It's kind of like downshifting of manual transmission.
Right. So have you heard the Hollow Knight soundtrack, and what are your thoughts on
it? I love the Hollow Knight soundtrack. Like you said, it is one of those things, one of those soundtracks that you can just sit back, good pair of headphones, high quality DAC does help, and you can just sit back. You can sit back. It's almost like, I don't want to call it chill out music, but it really is. Like it's a really weird type of, like, most people think chill out music, they think more like this weird like trance techno kind of thing, and Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way, but Hollow Knight is like atmospheric and chill out in its own way. Like, I don't think there's really anything that compares to something where you can just chill out to on a video game soundtrack and just be like, and feel relaxed, which is weird. Like to me, that is its own thing. So, I love it.
I mean, I struggled with putting Hollow Knight on here versus Zelda. And the reason why I chose, because Zelda and the Hollow Knight Zelda's soundtrack, come on. I mean, it's embedded forever in anybody's heart that's played Zelda. But because Zelda's so overplayed, I feel like sometimes I hear a Zelda song, and it's not that it's not amazing. It's not that it's the greatest thing ever. It's like a great song that the radio plays over and over and over again that you're just like, okay, yes, we know it's a good song, but God, I've heard it for 20 years now. I want to move on. So that's why I put Hollow Knight instead, because I feel like Hollow Knight but is a good, modern day, haven't listened to it 1,000 times already version of something that makes me think of a game immediately as soon as I hear it. And that's kind of how the Hollow Knight soundtrack is to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I completely get it. And yeah, kind of like like what you were saying. You have that song that you love in high school, then you hear it 20 years later. You're like, still a good song, but I don't want to hear it no more.
Exactly. So your next pick is one that you absolutely got me addicted to. I absolutely love this. Tell people what this one is.
This one is a indie 2D side-scrolling open world action RPG that is sprite based. Now, you throw all those terms together and people are like, what kind of game is that going to be? One with a killer atmospheric soundtrack. This is legitimately one, like for you, Hollow Knight is that one you can just sit back and relax to. To me, that's what this one is. The soundtrack is from Dex. I love Cyberpunk. I will be the first to tell you I'm the biggest Cyberpunk fanboy. Blade Runner, the new old one, like the 15 different the 15 different remakes that Ridley Scott wanted to make. All the Shadowrun games, like anything that is remotely related to that type of vibe, I am all about. And to me, I'll go so far as if you ripped out the soundtrack that was in the new Blade Runner and threw this in there, I would not be able to tell the difference.
Wow, that's awesome.
I love this, and this is done by Carl Anton, I believe that is how it's said. Rise of the Avatar, which is the first song and the theme song for it, starts out very cyberpunk. Like it is, so you got a lot of synth, you got a lot of off key stuff. Then it gets into a lot more bassy stuff as it kind of builds and builds and builds. Ascension starts off a little bit different. It has that building mentality to it, but it is more cyberpunk in the fact that it starts off slower, so it's not as a fast of a build as Rise of the Avatar is. And to me, that almost epitomizes like that kind of genre that the game's going for, because it's a slow build, and you're doing that in a 2D side scroller.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
So that to me is like one of probably my favorite soundtrack, and I say easily could replace the Blade Runner 2049 soundtrack.
Brilliant, man. I love your callback to those movies too. Some of the greatest, even the new one. I absolutely loved every second of it. Loved it.
3 hours I am glad I paid for.
Yes, absolutely. So my next one here, this is another game where my wife became widowed over Fallout 4 with composer, and this is, again, we apologize if we butcher names, but I think it's Enon Zur. This post-apocalypse, soundtrack. Well, let's just say this: post-apocalypse has never sounded so damn good, right? I mean, this is like the beautiful use of piano, where you're going to get me with pianos and violins anytime, I just love those two instruments. I can listen to them, anybody who's talented on them, anytime. I just absolutely just completely calms my soul when I hear those instruments done well. And Fallout 4 utilizes those amazingly throughout, creating a sinister vibe, which you usually don't hear very often with the piano. Like you were talking about organs and things like that before. Those are your typical ones that you kind of translate to that. But they do this intermixing in these moments where they're creating these dark themes with violins and piano that I think are just absolutely breathtaking. The soundtrack is dark at times, just like the game. It's kind of like a relentless roller coaster where one soundtrack is way up and you feel spirited, much like the game, like, oh, I've got all this equipment, I'm going to make it. And then the next minute you're mobbed by 30 people and you die. And that's very much the soundtrack. Like you feel it throughout, these highs and lows and different places that you're going, and sinister people you run into and good people. And you're going through that experience in the soundtrack, the entire time. It's a mix of the old and new, take on this type of compositions that the composer's done here, and it's just so good, man. You heard the soundtrack?
I have heard the soundtrack because I have played Fallout 4. So I love one thing that I love about the soundtrack too is it does all the atmospheric stuff, the darks and the highs and the lows of like what you as the character in the game are going to go through, but it does it in like that 1950s vibe.
Yeah, man.
And it captures like the 50s so well.
Mm-hmm.
And it like that is one thing that I love about the soundtrack. Like it's got a modern feel to it, don't get me wrong, but it captures like the essence of like Fallout is basically post-apocalyptic that is stuck in the 50s.
Yes.
That is really what it is. And it somehow, the soundtrack is modern, but it still goes well with that 50s vibe that the game has. Yeah. And that is a hard balance to find, post-apocalyptic or not. And the fact that it can go for the highest highs, I have all this stuff, I don't need it. Oh, I'm dead. That to me is a delicate balance that is so hard to find. And the funny thing is, Ian Zer also did the soundtrack for my pick.
Nice.
My pick is Siberia 3.
Love this soundtrack, dude.
This soundtrack is epic. The soundtrack takes you on an adventure, and while the game has flaws, I will not dispute that, it atmospherically sets up the game. See, the biggest thing I want people to understand when I choose these type of soundtracks is how does it play into the game? Like, because it makes you appreciate it more. For me. So like, while yes, I understand Siberia 3 is not up to the par of Siberia 2 for a lot of fans. I understand that. The soundtrack, I think, gives you that mysterious vibe that those games have always brought. Like, what's next? What am I going to find out here in the middle of, nowhere? And right. You find these little people called yokels or however they pronounce them in the game. And, you find like these whimsical, like mammoth type creatures. There's just such a sense of discovery almost with the game and the soundtrack that accompanies it that, like in Fallout 4, it atmospherically fits very well, because like there are times where like, oh, hey, the opening is like a whitewash in Siberia, but the music and everything that plays with it fits it so well. And that is again, with Fallout 4, that is such a hard thing to do. And as someone who appreciates good music and someone who can like I like visuals too. So when you can coalesce the two and make it's almost like making a relevant music video to the song. Like, I can get more invested in a music video if the visual component it ties into the music, and that will bring me in more. Like I said with like Blades of Time, that's why I like that game, that soundtrack.
Right.
It's able to do that.
Yep.
So, and the same thing with Siberia 3. So,
I mean, you bring up such a great point, because the genius in this music is not only that on its own, it would be recognized as beautiful compositions that you would want to listen to, but tied into the visuals. They've watched the game get played, or looked at the big moments within the game, and were able to compose music that fits into the elements of what's going on so well that they're telling the story with music. I mean, and there's no words in most cases. There may be hymns and different things in orchestra, like singing in the background, but for the most part, there's absolutely zero words, and they're telling the story with this music, and it's stayed with you. It's stuck in your brain. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. I love that soundtrack. I didn't play the game, but love that soundtrack. Went on one of my lists as a favorite for sure. So I cheated a little bit and added a sixth, and then I'm going to break the rules one more time at the end here. But my cheat here, so you're going to have to come up with one.
Oh, you're going to make me come up with one.
I'm going to make you come up with one on the fly, dude. Or you could pick one that we've gone over that is your top favorite must download. That'll be the rules. Either you pick a new one, or this is the one out of everything we've talked about you better go get. So my sixth one is XCOM 2 by Tim Wynn. This music is so good. First of all, XCOM 2 is such a great game. It's out. It's available for Linux, so it falls within the rules, right?
We have the only rule is we have no rules.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We have no rules. So this is the music in the Civil War, where they would play the drums and stuff to get the soldiers amped up, to get them ready for war. This is the music I would want playing in the background if I was to go to war. This music is just full of energy and beats that just make you absolutely emboldened. Like you almost can feel fresh air and life come into you as you're listening to this soundtrack. It's absolutely calibrated brilliance. So every note and strum and musical riff is just timed perfectly. Like it's mathematically, it feels like it's a perfect composition of music, which just makes it truly something unique. It's a great harmony. It's just a beautiful soundtrack to listen to from beginning to end, I feel like.
Oh, I agree. I don't think I could say enough that you already didn't. I mean, there's so much to like about XCOM 2 besides just the game. Like musically, like it captures almost everything about the game, but it's also something that you can just kind of pop on and just kind of get lost in your own thought. When if you need like something to get you in that mood to say you're exercising or doing work or whatever, that thing to pump you up, it's got enough of that too, where it's just like, oh, this is legitimately something I can put on, work out to, and not worry about. Like that to me is awesome. Like there's not enough soundtracks I personally think that do that, be it movies, video games, or whatever.
Absolutely, I agree. So here's my last rule I'm going to break here. This is one that I'm going to have to send to you, and then you'll have to give your honest opinion on it. But I obviously have some bias here. But you know how brothers can be. For the most part, when you have a brother, you pretty much just you don't like anything they do as you're growing up, and you don't like them. And then eventually, as you get older, you start to like them. All this stuff. Well, my brother is a game developer, and he has created a demo for a game called Gods and Nemesis, and it's out there on Steam. It's just a demo. He's releasing the full version here, in the coming months or so. But to me, the music, the game is, awesome, but the music that he's done for this game is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to send you the soundtrack. You give your honest opinion on it, but it fits a lot of this type of music and elements and atmosphere style stuff. So I absolutely love it. I'm a little biased. So I have to send it to you to get your take on it and give your honest opinion. I know you will. And, see what you think from there. So now that I've broken the rules twice. Go ahead.
Good thing there's no rules. No, I'm definitely interested. Go ahead and send that over. And I, I'll be nice. Like I won't be a cussy video. Yes, I can do not safe for work videos normally, but believe it or not, I do videos where I don't cuss a lot. It does happen.
There's a good soul in there somewhere, Dark One.
Yeah, you can see it every Saturday at 10:30 Eastern.
There you go.
With a small exception, I might troll certain people, like the person on here right now.
How dare you, sir?
So you're gonna make me come up with one off the top of my head, and you're making me look at my Steam list, and that is a really long list, and I really don't like you right now for that.
You're welcome, by the way.
Okay, when
the troller becomes the troll.
I have been trolled because he makes me look at my Steam list, which is 537 games. I really dislike you right now.
And have you found one to add?
Actually, believe it or not, I have, because I only keep certain games installed that I like. So for me, nice. This particular game, I think, does not get a lot of love. And that is actually Carrier Chronicles.
Ooh, good one.
This is when this game came out originally. This is a PS3 game that came out originally, but I got it on PS3 and I have it on PC or Windows. Sorry, whatever. My thing about it is the art style is equivocal to a living painting, like the way the cutscenes and all that kind of stuff are done. But the way the music ties into it and the themes of the music play well into the art style, and it plays well into the theme of the game, which is about family and country and lengths you'll go to, and just a lot of themes that are so integral to one another that, to me, when I grade video games like on a scale, like you always hear the whole video games are art thing. It takes a lot of things to make, to me, it takes a lot of things to make video game art. Like there's so many components to make something art. It's not just an art style. It's not just a soundtrack. It's not just the way the game's directed. It's the same way with movies. Like you can have a great movie, but if you have a crappy soundtrack, hate to break it to you, your movie's not going to be art. So to me, this epitomizes almost kind of like what Dex does. It ties into all the themes so well and the art style so well that you really can't not appreciate the music that it has. And the music's all over the place: upbeat, downbeat, sad, happy. It's like it's like everything we've talked about rolled into one game, and I love it for that.
Nice.
So, any other rules you want to break? Because we have
no, man. I think that's it. That's right. We have none, so it doesn't count.
All right. So we will probably be doing another one of these, but I think the next one will probably be on your channel. You guys will just have to wait and figure out what that one is. I will give a hint. It is Linux related, finally.
Wow.
So
look at us Linux people doing Linux content,
And look at us Linux people doing non-Linux content. It does happen. We live in a multifaceted world.
Amazing.
So that is it for this video. I want to thank DasGeek for joining. He likes to fill my brain with a lot of frustration at times.
With a lot of knowledge, you mean.
Says the Mensa user. But so yeah, that is it. But you guys know what to do. Rate it, subscribe. Peace.
See you.